Welcome Linux enthusiast. This is the 12th episode of our Linux learning series. If you are coming from our previous episodes, then hit the like button and subscribe to our channel. Or if you are coming for the first time on our channel and watching this video, then please go through this playlist above. In this video, we'll be covering the installation of web services in Linux machine. If you are looking to upskill in Linux and get globally recognized certificate, then check out our DevOps course. Here is the link below in the description box. Let's begin the video now. Alright, so let's talk about the web services. When I say web services, what does it mean? You see websites, google.com, drive.google.com, mail.google.com. So these are nothing but web services which are running, but they have some underlying services as well. For example, Gmail is nothing but using SMTP, which is port number 25. It uses mail transfer protocol under the hood of a web services. But if we talk about plain www.google.com, that is a search engine, but that is nothing but a website. On top of which you can have search engine, executions where you can perform certain things. So we will be deploying the websites, web services, and seeing how does it look like and how can you deploy it in the Linux machine. So you can see in the image that a web server, which is hosted somewhere in the public internet, and from your local client machine, which is a browsers, you can use Firefox, Mozilla, whatever is available on the machine, and you can just try to access that via internet. So that facility gives you by the web services, So in this example, we'll be testing out Apache 2, which is a package for web services. And then how do you access that web services, and then, how do you start it? There is another lightweight website services available, which is called Nginx. Nginx is also used as a load balancer, as well as you can use Nginx as a web services. So let's try with the Apache thing, and then we'll see how do you host the content. So this is my machine. I have already deployed the web services. I'll show it to you. If I try to search localhost on port 80, so my Star Agile web server is currently running on this machine. How did I set this up and stuff? So we will review that. Let's say sudo, and then first of all, you should have the service systemctl status Apache. Okay, so Apache service is currently running. That's the reason you are able to load the website. What if I stop this service? Okay, I have stopped it. Now let's try to access it again. And when I say this, I'm still able to host port 80. Maybe it's loading from the cache, but it should supposed to be confirm status Apache 2 only. Alright, inactive, that is good. What if we try? There is a command line utility called curl, through which also you can connect to any website or web services. It says failed to open connections. Hopefully this will also go away. Let's reopen the browser. Okay. Say localhost port 80. Okay, still loading for some reason. Okay, anyways, but here we can see that in this, when we try to make a connection, it's saying connection refuse, which means you are unable to connect to the web services. But in the browser, maybe it's loading from the cache. That's okay. What if we try with the IP address and see things? 10.50. Let's copy this as well. Paste. Okay, it's not loading, it's unable to connect, right? Let's try to start the service back and see the status again. Okay, I've started the service. Let's check the status. Apache 2 service is currently running, active, which is responsible for this website hosting. And now let's refresh our page. Why is it connecting to HTTP? So just remember that HTTP and HTTP is little different. So HTTP is the normal protocol which runs on the port 80. HTTPS is the secure way of authenticating to the web services, which uses port 443. HTTP uses usually port 80 or sometimes 8080 as well. When you're doing accessing via HTTP, which means you are not doing the secure connections to the web services. But if you do see any of the public websites which is hosted and you do shoppings and access the website, you always connect to the port 443, which is HTTPS. How do you verify if the website is legitimate or not? That is where the concept of certificates and stuff comes in, right? So you must have seen in your browser when you access google.com, in the left side there is a lock button shows up. That lock button in the browsing tab shows you that this is a secure website. And if you click on that, you can see the cookies and certificate information. So that certificate information shows that this website is legitimate because a particular CA has approved this website and provide the CRT to the web services, right? So this is, the certificate has an expiry period. So it's always the browsers what we try to access with the version whatever is available, let's say Firefox, so they already have the public certificate for that server. That's the reason they are able to identify, okay, this server is legitimate or not. So that is the reason to always use the HTTPS. So whenever you see there is a website which is not showing HTTPS, which means it's not secure. Any hackers can also intervene in between and then try to steal your data. So it's always suggestible that you should always prefer to use the secure websites. It's for some reason it is just going on HTTP. I don't know. Let's just try to do this curl again. And with the curl, we can, curl is nothing but, you know, whatever the browser is doing, it's a command line utility. It does the same way to fetch the, you know, HTTP request, and these are the HTTP responses we are running. So curl says on localhost port 80 it is working as fine. You know, you are able to get the response back. What is the response? Welcome to Stargell web server. What if I try with the IP address? Okay, IP address, it's unable to connect. It says port is failed. For some reason it's unable to connect and not able to establish the connection. That's okay, that's not a problem. I will using the you know, port 80 and localhost in this case. All right, so let's just do one more thing here. From the client machine, let's try to access that web services if it is running or not. So let me connect. Okay, so this is there, port number 80. Okay, it says unable to connect. Let's just see if there is any firewall rules are not blocking it. So let me just list down all the firewall rules. Okay, so it says any TCP connection is rejecting SSH and HTTP. Okay, it's rejecting the HTTP. Okay, that's the reason you are unable to access it from the remote machine. So let's do this. Let's try to delete this rule, and it also has an accept rule. So once we delete this rule, it will automatically goes away from the IP tables, and then it so this rule will take the precedence on top of it. So let's list down the chain first. Okay, so chain input, this is the rule number 2. Okay, so input chain rule number 2 I want to delete. So this is how you can delete it. Sudo IP tables -d delete, and which chain, input chain, which rule number, which is 2. See, 2 number is this. Reject, all the reject. So I want to delete this 2 number, and let's review this IP table again. Okay, that is gone now. We are having 2 rules. HTTP is allowed. So let's try to access it. I'm seeing. Okay, yeah, now I'm able to access it via HTTP on that IP address. So from here also should be able to access it, I believe. HTTP 10 dot. 211. Okay, so this is also working now. So that was because of that rule itself, anywhere from any machine. If we try to access the HTTP, because of this rule, we see the usage of this IP tables as well, where it was restricting the traffic. Now from anywhere to anywhere on HTTP, it has the accept rule, which means any traffic which comes on the HTTP will be accepting it, so it'll be working. So now let's talk about the configurations. Where do we set those files and where do we make the changes? First, let's talk about the package. So there is a package called Apache 2. You can say this. So this package is already installed on my machine because I already have the HTTP services, web services running. If you don't have it, so you can install it like this. Once you do this, you just have to start the service. Systemctl Apache to start. The configuration file for this is present inside HTTP. Sorry, where www.html index.html. So this is the file which has the content of your web services. So for example, let me just open it with sudo and let's say welcome back to the star agile. So anybody who knows HTML CSS languages, they can write down the proper HTML page here. They can write down and copy the index.html. Since for this testing, I just want to more focus towards how to set up the web services and not towards the HTML and CSS language. We are just adding up some values over here. Star agile Linux learning series. And this is your trainer. Okay, so let's do this. Let's save this and refresh our website. Okay, now you can see this. This is the heading. Okay, because that has H1 as a heading. So that's why you are seeing that in the heading thing. And this is the content, whatever I wrote in the file, it is representing and opening up here. If I refresh this also, it will update here as well. So that is how whatever the index.html page you want, you can just update that page to this location. This is the default location of the Apache 2 web server. So if you want to have a website, you can just install the Apache 2 package, start the service, enable the service so that whenever your machine will boot up, it will automatically start the Apache 2 service, and after that you can just execute or access your website on your machine. So that is about the basic web hosting what we are doing. Now let's talk about how to do the virtual hostings. So for virtual hosting, how do we do it? Like how do we change the pages and stuff? So you can have custom websites. So for example, here I have two paths which I have changed here. So for example, I have where www. My paths are one path is HTML. I have created one more path called my website, and another is other site as well. Let's look into this and the content what it has it. Let's try to read the content. Okay, so this my website index.html, it has a content called this is a virtual hosting. Okay, let's check about this as well, this location. Site. Okay, this also has a content called welcome to another site. So there are three index.html present. One is where www.html, one is in my website HTML, there is one other sites. See, it's always okay to have multiple websites hosting on a single server, right? We cannot just have one dedicated server for one website. That is not how it works. So it works like this way: virtual hosting, multiple websites are being hosted on the single machine and have a replica, and the database also connected and in sync with multiple servers. I say nodes in a cluster, and then one node goes down, then your load balancer automatically makes sure they're up and running services, web services. It redirects the traffic so that consumer does not see any downtime. Okay, website is not running or not working. So it should always be redirecting traffic to the respective web server and to the respective web endpoint. So for example, let's say my website, you could have said that gmail.com, or this is other site is a drive.com, google drive.google.com, something like that. You can just change it, and then you can have a respective configuration as well. So the configuration, what is required is, I'll just show it to you. So this is required for, this is by default coming up when you download the Apache 2 package and start the service. What if I say my website? So for my website, you have to make sure that it has ownership is www data and the group ownership is www data. Okay, and similarly on the index.html also. Similarly for other site also, this is the same thing. You have to make sure you set it up, this thing. And then the permissions also, if you look at the permission, it's 755 for dot, which is other site, and similarly for my website 755. So this permission should meet. If it does not meet, then this will not work. Now this index.html thing is fine. Where do we set up the configuration? Okay, if somebody tries to access mywebsite.com, then it should go to this HTML page, and if somebody tries to access othersite.com, then it should go to this other site index.html page. So that configuration is present in the SSH configuration file. So then, so the configuration file for this would be etc. All the configuration files are present in the etc folder. Apache 2 sites available and mywebsite.conf. So this is my website virtual hosting. So if you look at this, this is the block that you have to create here. So the server name is mywebsite.com. Let me change it and say www.gmail.com. okay, or www.gmail or www.mywebsite.com, because if I say gmail.com, maybe it will take the public Gmail. So I just want to host my own website. That's how, for example, Gmail and Drive are hosted. So www.mywebsite.com. The document root. So this document root is nothing but the location. It says when somebody tried to access www.mywebsite.com, go to this location and then try to see if there is any index.html present or not. If there is anything present, then load that page. If you are giving some other location, you can give some other location, and make sure that location has www data, ownership and group ownership, as well as 755 on the ownership of that directory. So that is the directory where www my website, document root, allow, override all. And so this is how the virtual hosting configuration look like. So you can set up something like this and then save the configuration. Similarly for other site conf also has it. So I say other site is www.othersite.com. okay. Now for other site, you have to go to where www other site location. So which is here. This index.html will be loading. For www.mywebsite.com, this location it will go and try to read the index.html, whatever is present, and then load it. Once you are done this, so you can enable the site and restart Apache. So how do you enable it? There is a command called e2 and site. Okay, mywebsite.conf. Okay, enabled. Another site. Okay, already enabled. Perfect. Now you can just reload the. You don't want to restart the service, because restart might take slightly downtime. Reason being, so this is a very small setup where we have 3 websites hosted, but I'm talking about large scale websites which are huge contents and stuff, right? If you restart the service, it might take some milliseconds of time or downtime to basically catch up the things. But better whenever you make any changes in the configuration, so you should always reload it rather than restarting the service. So you can just reload Apache 2.service. Once it does, it basically updates the configuration without restarting the service. So reload is a very good command. We will be discussing this in systemctl when we'll be talking about it, but for here I'm just trying to tell you this. After that, you just need to make sure, when we discussed about DNS, we talked about there are some local cache information, and then there is a DNS server. So www.google.com, if you are unable to find that entry inside your etc host, it checks the resolve.conf, and then from there the DNS server of your internet provider, and then on top of it top level domain, and then com, and then Google, and then www. We discussed that all in our DNS chapter when we talked about it. But just to rebrush here, I'm just trying to tell you this. This is the file which is locally present. So whenever somebody will try to access mywebsite.com, it should go to this IP address. So this is resolving to IP address, and then from this IP address should be able to access the website. But since I made some modification, this is a read-only file. Let me do with sudo. Since I made some modification, so I will just say here www.mywebsite.com and www.othersite.com. Okay, so and this is the localhost. So this entry is present here. Now let's try to access it. www.mywebsite. So this is loading me the page of my website document root. So if you look at here, let's get my website index. So this is the content what we have in the my website. Okay, the same content you are seeing here. This is a virtual hosting. Now let's try to load other site. So this is loading welcome to another site. Let's try to load here www other site and the index.html. So this is the page you are seeing here. So there is no such magic, it seems, right? It's just that the location wherever you have index.html present, you just have to append that location into the configuration files, and once you do that, after that your virtual hosting will be ready to use it for the particular domain, and then you have to make an entry for the DNS server. So it's so easy to set up the web services, and you can access it from anywhere. Let's say if I try to access it from this machine, I should be able to access it. HTTP access or just www.my. It's just that you should also have the entry here as well in the host. So you have to update this, because on this machine, this is a client machine. Currently they are in just two machines in this setup, but virtually in the internet you see there are a lot of internet connections and people can easily connect to the machines, right? But here in this case we have the limited connection, two machines only. So okay, starj is not in server file. Let's just try to use this parallel. So we are just explicitly giving that it should go to this IP. Whenever somebody will access it from here, it should directly go to this IP, not to any other IP. If we don't set these settings here, it will go to the internet DNS, let's say name server, whatever the name server we have in the net plan, you remember, 8.8.8.8, and there it will find some other websites and then it will load it. For example, currently let's save this configuration and then say www.mywebsite.com. It's loading my website perfectly. Othersite.com. It's loading another site also. Now let me do some changes and see stuff here. Okay, I've commented this and saved it. After that, let me close this and open it again. Okay, it's still redirecting some way. mywebsite.com. Okay, let's go to this IP. So it's currently loading from the cache. What if I try to open it up in secure window? So now you see mywebsite.com is some other website which is loading from the internet. The reason being we have removed that entries or commented those entries in the etc host file. So whenever when I hit on mywebsite.com, it tries to check the etc host file. Does it have the entry for mywebsite.com? It did not, because we already commented those entries. So then after that it checks to the DNS server. So this was the DNS server which was setting up. To this server, it tries to ask for the entry or IP address for this website. So it found the IP address which is the public IP address 64.1. Some website is hosting on this IP address with the same name called mywebsite.com, and that's how you are able to load this website. Now that is a thing. If you don't want this to happen and you want it to change, so you can do this. Starting with hash. Okay, you have to uncomment those lines, and then once you save this configuration and then you say host www.mysite.com, it will locate on the local host. It will not go to the this remote location wherever this website is hosted in the public internet. So that's the reason you will not see the difference. You will see the difference here. So now currently it is going to this server 10.211.55.12, and this server has a virtual hosting hosted with this name othersite.com or mywebsite.com, and that's why you are able to communicate to it. So that is how you can set up the virtual hosting, and that is how you can set up for multiple websites, and you can see the web services available. And you can make few changes in terms of setting up things. For example, like let's say you can just make some modifications in the HTML as well, or you can add some firewall rules. So let's try to add some firewall rules. For example, let's check. I have sudo apt IP tables input connections and then say reject. I don't want, or let's say I want to reject all the traffic which comes from this to destination port 80. So then I said this, but we already have accept rule. That's why it will work. So accept is the precedence at this moment for number 2, and that's the reason you are able to see it. And your reject rule is on the down. So first let's try to delete this. Which chain? Input chain rule number 2 I want to delete. Okay, now let's verify. It has only 2 rules. One is for SSH, all the connections are rejected, and for HTTP all the connections are rejected. Now let's try again. Let's clear this. Okay, it says unable to connect. It's unable to connect it because the connections are rejected. The firewall is rejecting the connections. So you can then if you want to flush all the rules, so you can do this way: IP tables -F. It will flush all your IP table rules. You will not seeing any of the rules which were added or present in. So it's always recommended to take the backup. Now let's try to add some rules for the source IP, and then we'll see that in a bit. So let's see. Let's just add it for one IP address, and then we will try to see if that IP address is blocking or not. So let's say sudo IP tables -a input chain sources 10.211.55.12. okay, from this source I want packet to be reject or drop. Okay, so now I can see this. Let's try IP tables, that is fine. But we have not told the, let's list down the rules. IP tables -l, drop all the packet from this source. So this should be applicable for, okay, this is loading here, local, but not any other connections will work. So I was just trying to explain that from a particular IP, you can set up a rule. There might be some syntax for setting up a rule for a specific IP to only allow that IP to basically, able to access the HTTP. Otherwise, no other IP address are able to access. So this usually helps. Let's say there is any internal hosting that people have it. What they want is that internal website should only be accessible from the internet, limited, that is private network. Apart from that private network, no other user should be able to access those websites. So in that case, these IP table rules helps in order to set up the blocking rules for anything else other than those private networks. So those ways also you can use based on your use case. So that is one thing. After that, like just a basic rule, you want to set it up, you can do it via UFW also, that we has seen in the UFW Apache fold, that will help to set up it for full. Let's try to set up Nginx, if in case we can try to deploy that as well and see if that Nginx thing works here. So for Nginx, let's try to install the package sudo apt installed Nginx. Okay, since I don't have this package previously, so I'm just first time installing it and seeing things. Okay, now let's see, I'll just stop systemctl apache 2 and status systemctl status Nginx. Okay, Nginx has failed. Let's try to start it if we are able to. Okay, let's start, see status, it's running. Now let's try to load localhost port 80. So yeah, you can see this. Currently the web service is running, but that is using service called Nginx rather than using Apache 2. So Nginx is very lightweight, as I said before. So lightweight means it has limited package, which is mainly responsible for any website to host. But Apache 2 has a lot of big configurations. You can do a lot of stuff. But with the lightweight, if you would want, you can just use this Nginx package. So this package will help you to see that you are able to host a website. So it does not have a much of basically the in terms of Apache comparison. If you do with Nginx, it will not have a lot of features and capabilities to perform. But yes, if you just want to deploy the web services and you would want to see if how does it look like, so you can easily configure Nginx, and that is also supported in the Docker and Kubernetes environments as well. You can directly fetch the Nginx image, and then you can set it up, and then you can configure it via the container services. So that also you can perform. So let's make some more changes in our web services and try to see how does it look like. So let's create one more file and entry. So let's say vim www HTML. I'll just do one thing. I'll create directories. Sudo mkdir fnp where www. Let's create something like star agile. Okay, fine. Now let's do echo HTML content, HTML body, h1 header, and then say to star agile. Series. Welcome to Star Agile Linux learning series, and then you can just h1 and then /body, then /HTML, and then you can just save it, or you can use another command called sudo d/where .html. Okay. So now it has basically copied over the content here. You can just see it, cat and then paste. Okay, that has this content. After that, let's set up the ownership. Sudo chown www data :www data where w star agile. One more thing is you should use -R so that recursively also whenever any file or things will be created, you can just it by default has the ownership and group ownership created www-data. Okay, that is good. After that, let's set the permission as well. chmod 7 sci-fi recursively to where www star agile. Okay, that is done. After that, let's try to add up a file. Sudo etc Apache sites available. I'll create star agile.conf, but before that, let's take a reference of another file and copy over the data so that it's easy for us not to start creating from scratch. So I'll say copy. You have to use sudo copy etc Apache to sites available. Other site.conf, where you want to copy. I want to copy in Apache sites available and star agile.conf. Okay, now let's open. So let's set up a website called Star Agile, and then location is Star Agile. Okay, and then this document root directory also Star Agile. Save it. After that, you just have to enable sudo a to nsite www star conf. Okay, so it says enabling site star agile. To activate the new configuration, you need to run systemctl reload command, so that it will just reload the configuration. It will not start the service. But since we are using Apache, okay, we have to reload it because Nginx might not be supported for virtual hosting, or might be some other configuration stuff. But for Apache 2, we have to start the service because we have stopped it. And it's creating a conflict because Nginx is running. So first, let's stop Nginx. Stop Nginx. After that, let's start Apache 2. Apache 2. And then reload. And after that, let's try to add an entry. so that we can add staragile.com inside etc host, so that it says www.staragile.com. So whenever somebody will try to access www.staragile.com, it should be able to go to localhost machine. So now let's try to access our page, www.staragile.com. Yep, so we are able to get the page loaded via Apache 2 service. Welcome to Staragile Linux Learning Series. So that's how you can host multiple websites. There are other ways as well where you don't have to always create multiple configurations. You can have multiple entries in the same configuration, but you just have to change the name of the directory. What I'm trying to say is, if you here only if you open, so you can have multiple blocks like this, one block for staragile.com, then one block for mywebsite.com, and one block for othersite.com. So that way also you can save creating multiple configurations, because let's say for example there are hundreds of websites which are you hosting. To create hundreds website and enable it one by one and then reload it, it's kind of tricky to do that sometimes. So it's good if you have an option where you can append the keep on entries for all the websites that you are gonna host as a virtual hosting into a same file, and then you can do it. So this way also can be helpful to achieve the same thing. Yeah, but it's just that Nginx is just kind of a small lightweight web services if you would want to play around with it. But since there is only one option, you can always keep on running either Nginx or Apache 2. Otherwise, you will get these error messages like this. It basically tries to tell you that there is another websites or some other services which is linked to the web services are still in progress. That's the reason you are not able to execute this. It's creating conflict for you. So the logs, you can just access this log and it will tell you what is happening. So we will be talking about general CTL later. That's where we will be seeing what's happening for the general CTL and how to capture the logs. So yeah, so that's what we discussed about how to having the web services and how to create it via Apache 2 as well as via Nginx. So if you want to learn Linux and get certified from IBM, click on this link given below in the description. That's a wrap for this chapter. I'll meet you in the next episode of this Linux series.